Hey there, it's Amanda Christine Hill. Welcome back to Petals in the Ashes, Ink and Fire podcast. If you're here again, thank you. Coming back to this space, it's not easy. These stories, these truths, they're heavy, but they're real. And if you're listening, it probably means you're carrying something too. Maybe something you've never even said out loud. In our first episode, I opened the door to my story, the decade I spent inside an abusive relationship with someone who broke me down piece by piece. But also, the moment I started putting those pieces back together. Today, we're going deeper. We're going to talk about what abuse really is. Not just bruises or shouting matches, but the slow erosion of self. The kind of abuse that hides in charm, in silence, in the moments no one else sees. In episode 2, we're talking about what domestic violence and intimate partner violence look like behind closed doors. We'll name the red flags that so many of us were taught to ignore, or worse, to see as love. We'll walk through the cycle of abuse, the honeymoon, the tension, the explosion, the apology, and why so many of us get caught in it again and again. And we're going to talk about why we don't leave. Because it's not as simple as walking out the door. There are reasons, deep ones. And if no one's ever told you this before, those reasons don't make you weak. They make you human. This episode might stir something in you. It might bring up pain or clarity or even anger. That's okay. That means you're waking up to something real. And I'll be right here with you. Let's go there. Together. Hey there, I'm Amanda Christine Hill, and I want to thank you for being here. You're about to step into something real, something raw, and something unlike anything you've heard before. This isn't your typical story of survival. No sugarcoating, no glossing over the hard parts. This is the truth, laid bare, just like the fire it took to get here. Welcome to Petals in the Ashes, Ink and Fire. This is where we're not just talking about surviving narcissistic abuse and domestic violence. We're talking about what it takes to reclaim everything that was stolen from you. Your power, your voice, and your life. This isn't a gentle, tidy recovery journey where everything wraps up with a bow. No, this is the real deal. This is the aftermath of surviving a decade of domestic violence, psychological, financial, sexual, and narcissistic abuse. Fighting addiction, and ultimately finding the strength to rebuild my life. The messy, painful, beautiful process of rising from the ashes of everything that tried to break you. I'm not here to preach. I'm here to speak the truth, the raw truth. And I believe you didn't find this podcast by accident. Maybe you're stuck in a situation you can't escape, gaslit to the point of doubting your own sanity, or maybe you just need someone who gets it. Someone who's been in the dirt, in the fire, and walked out on the other side, stronger. So this is your space. This is your permission to stop hiding, stop pretending, and start owning your story. You're not alone in this. We're in this together, and it's time to rise. So buckle up. It's going to get gritty. But trust me, this fire, it's going to burn away the lies and make room for the truth to set you free. Welcome to the revolution. Let's rise. Welcome to Petals in the Ashes, Ink and Fire podcast, hosted by Amanda Christine Hill. This podcast is not just a collection of episodes. It's a deeply personal and transformative journey. It's the story of my life, a story of surviving a decade-long abusive relationship at the hands of a physical abuser, a narcissist, and someone with borderline personality disorder. But more than that, It's a story of how I found the strength to rise from the ashes and reclaim my power. Welcome back to episode 2 of Petals in the Ashes Ink and Fire podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Christine Hill, writer, survivor, advocate, and above all, a voice for the ones still trying to find their own. This podcast is a space born out of pain, transformation, and fierce healing for the ones who feel silenced, for those lost in the confusion of abuse disguised as love, and for anyone who's ever had to rebuild themselves from the inside out. Petals in the Ashes is about reclaiming what was scorched, shattered, or stolen, and finding poetry, purpose, and power in your story. Because there is beauty left in the aftermath. There's growth in the burn, and there's still softness inside you, even after all the harm. Today's episode is one that I truly believe every single survivor, supporter, and even skeptic should hear. We're talking about the fundamentals of abuse, more specifically, intimate partner violence. Because the truth is, so many of us don't even realize we're experiencing abuse when we're in it. You may be asking yourself, was that abuse? Could that have really happened to me? Maybe your partner tells you it wasn't that bad, or you're too sensitive, or worse, you're the one who makes me act this way. And let me be painfully clear about something. If you're asking yourself whether what you're experiencing is abuse, there's a high chance that it is. Studies and survivor stories alike show that doubt is one of the biggest red flags. The second guessing, the confusion, the inner tug of war, that's not weakness. That's how psychological abuse works. It breaks down your ability to trust your own instincts. Living with him wasn't just difficult, it was terrifying. The fear didn't come out of nowhere. It was built over time, brick by brick, moment by moment. He didn't need to hit me every day to keep me afraid. The violence was always in the air, in his silence, in the look he gave me, in the way he clenched his fists or suddenly exploded, loud, jarring outbursts that made the walls feel like they were closing in. He'd scream inches from my face, spit flying, his rage pouring over me like fire. I'd feel my entire body go stiff, trying not to make it worse. He punched objects and walls without thinking twice, slammed furniture, gripped things with so much force it felt like they might snap. But he always made sure I only almost saw it. He'd hit the roof of the car, slam his fists into the center console, or hold the steering wheel like he was trying not to tear it off. He never missed the chance to remind me that his violence could escalate if and when he wanted it to. So when I flinched, when I shook or cried or tried to speak up, he'd say, "You should be lucky I didn't do worse." That was his version of mercy. The psychological abuse was constant. If I said I was hurt, if I told him I was scared, confused, or just needed space, he'd say I was being dramatic, that I misunderstood him, that I was making it all up. He'd deny things I saw with my own eyes, heard with my own ears, twist words, rewrite events, gaslight me until I couldn't tell what was real anymore. And eventually, I started believing him. He had this way of making me feel like I was always the problem. If I cried, I was too emotional. If I shut down to protect myself, I was cold, distant, and didn't want to work on our relationship. There was no version of me that was ever right, ever enough, ever safe. When I was hurt, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and tried to explain why, he'd say, "That's on you." I didn't mean to hurt you, so that's not my fault. And over time, that broke something in me. Because how do you heal from pain that someone insists never happened? I walked on eggshells every single day. I learned to read the room the second he stepped in. I measured my words, filtered my tone. I tried to become the version of me that he'd find acceptable. And in doing that, I slowly disappeared. From the outside, we looked normal. Polite smiles, dinner parties, photos on the wall. But on the inside, it felt like hell. And the worst part? I started to think maybe I deserved it. Maybe this was just what love looked like for someone like me. But it wasn't love. It was control. It was fear. It was survival. Let's unpack this. Domestic violence and intimate partner violence isn't just bruises. It's not just fists or black eyes. It's not always dramatic. More often than not, it starts subtle. It starts with control, isolation, words, tone, fear. It's being told you're crazy when you bring up concerns. It's not being allowed to go somewhere without explaining why. It's having to check in constantly or having your phone checked. It's financial manipulation, being denied access to your own money, or not being allowed to work. It's sexual coercion that leaves you feeling hollow, confused, or violated, even if you didn't say no outright, because fear made it impossible. Abuse thrives in secrecy, in shame, in silence, and abusers are masters of rewriting history, making you the villain and them the victim. Let me be even more specific. If your partner shoves you even once, that's physical abuse. If they grab your arm or wrist to control you or stop you from leaving, that's physical abuse. If they scream in your face, call you names, threaten you, intimidate you, break objects near you, that is emotional and psychological abuse. If they gaslight you, deny things they've said or done, twist your reality, make you feel like you're losing it, that's abuse. If they apologize, cry, beg for forgiveness, and promise to change, but the behavior keeps repeating, that is the cycle of abuse. And it doesn't get better without serious intervention. And no matter how much love you feel, or how many good moments you've had, or how deeply you want to believe in the version of them that can be kind, abuse doesn't cancel itself out just because love exists. You can love someone and still be unsafe with them. Next up, let's dig into one of the biggest questions survivors get asked, and often ask themselves, why did I stay? The truth is, many survivors stay not because they're weak or naive or don't see the red flags. They stay because of something called the cycle of abuse, a psychological pattern that traps even the strongest, smartest, most compassionate people in deeply harmful relationships. Let's walk through it. 1. Tension building. This is where it starts. Something shifts. You can feel it in your body. Your gut tightens, your chest gets heavy, your mind goes into hyper-alert mode. Maybe nothing bad has happened yet, but something is off. The energy changes. Your partner might be silent and cold or on edge and irritable. You start adjusting, doing anything to avoid triggering them. You're walking on eggshells. You stop speaking your truth. You laugh at jokes that hurt. You suppress your feelings just to keep the peace. And you start blaming yourself. Maybe I'm just too sensitive. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. That's not love. That's fear. That's the beginning of control. 2. The incident. Then it happens. The outburst, the rage, the slap, the shove, the name-calling, the accusations, the threats, the manipulation, the gaslighting. It could be one or all of those things. Verbal, emotional, psychological, sexual, or physical. Sometimes it's explosive and violent. Sometimes it's silent and cutting. The method doesn't matter as much as the impact. Your sense of safety, physical and emotional, is shattered. And here's the thing. It often happens behind closed doors. No one else sees it. So you carry the shock, the confusion, and the shame alone. 3. Reconciliation. Then, almost suddenly, the person who hurt you becomes the person you fell in love with again. They cry, they apologize. They say it was the stress, the alcohol, their childhood, you. They buy you flowers, write long texts, hold your face in their hands and swear they'd never mean to hurt you, and part of you wants to believe them, because you know they're capable of kindness. That version of them is real too, right? This is what makes it so confusing. The abuser isn't always a monster. They can be affectionate, charming, vulnerable, and that tenderness hits you like a wave, because after all the fear and chaos, you're desperate for something that feels safe again, so you forgive them. You give them another chance. You cling to the hope that this time will be different. 4. Calm, the honeymoon phase. Then comes the calm. Things feel normal, even good. They might be overly loving, attentive, helpful. You start breathing easier. You begin to think maybe it really was a one-time thing. Maybe the worst is over. But what's really happening is that your brain and your nervous system are being conditioned. The abuse, apology, and affection create a trauma bond, a deep chemical attachment where you begin associating pain with love, conflict with closeness, survival with connection. And then the tension starts building again, slowly, silently, invisibly. The cycle repeats, over and over, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for years. But every time it leaves a scar. Every time it gets harder to tell what's real. And every time it chips away at your self-worth, your intuition, and your belief that you deserve better. The same hands that hold you can hurt you, and that contradiction becomes a cage. And that cage, it's not just emotional, it's neurological. Trauma actually rewires the brain. You stop trusting your instincts. You normalize chaos. You shrink yourself just to stay safe. You may even feel addicted to the high after the low, because in a trauma bond, the relief can feel like love. And this is why it's so hard to leave, not because you don't want to, but because you've been trained, manipulated, and slowly broken down to believe that staying is the safer, saner choice. But it's not. Staying may feel familiar, but it's not freedom. And naming this cycle, seeing it clearly, is often the first terrifying and liberating step toward breaking it. From the very beginning, there were signs, red flags that my body couldn't ignore, even when my mind desperately tried to. I wanted to believe in the love, in the dream of a loving relationship, but my body was speaking the truth, louder and louder, with every argument, every sharp word, every toxic glance. I thought I could push through it, that somehow love would conquer the pain. But as the relationship progressed, I found that my body was far more in tune with reality than I ever was. My mind wanted to stay blinded, to convince itself that the chaos was just a rough patch, that the tension was something that could be worked through. But my body knew better. It screamed for relief, even when I ignored it. It was a constant reminder that something was deeply wrong, even when I was too caught up in the emotional whirlwind to see it. The physical symptoms began to surface quickly. Pain, stress, illness, all signs that the relationship was taking a toll I couldn't outrun, no matter how much I tried to force myself to stay in the dream. Let's talk about some red flags. Not the kind that scream run right away, but the quiet ones. The ones that get dismissed, minimized, or maybe most dangerously, mistaken for love. The truth is, abuse often doesn't start with a slap or a scream. It starts with subtle shifts, small invasions, emotional undercurrents that make you question yourself before you ever question them. These are the red flags that creep in and take root. 1. They want to move fast. In the beginning, it feels like a whirlwind romance, intense, exciting, cinematic. Big declarations like, I've never felt this way about anyone, or I know it's fast, but I just know you're the one. They text constantly, want to spend every moment together, maybe even talk about moving in or marriage early on. It feels intoxicating, like the kind of passion you've been craving. But this love bombing is about more than affection. It's about control. The faster things move, the less time you have to think, to observe, to build boundaries. If something feels too good to be true, take a breath. Ask yourself, is this love or a performance? 2. They isolate you. At first, it might look like, I just want you to myself, or I don't like how your friend talks to you. Maybe they say your family's too involved, too opinionated, too much, or they pout when you make plans without them. Over time, your circle gets smaller. You stop reaching out, you stop being reached out to. Suddenly, it's just you and them, and that's exactly how they want it. Because it's easier to control someone who has nowhere else to turn. Love doesn't require isolation. Healthy love encourages connection, not disconnection. 3. They criticize you, constantly. It might not sound like direct insults at first. It might come wrapped in sarcasm, jokes, or just being honest. Are you really going to wear that? Wow, you're sensitive. You should be grateful someone like me is with you. Over time, these small digs erode your self-worth. You start questioning your choices, your looks, your intelligence, until eventually you shrink. Not because you want to, but because you're trying to avoid the next blow. 4. They make you feel guilty for having needs. Whether it's asking for more emotional support, space, honesty, or simply rest, they make you feel like you're too needy, too emotional, too much. You start convincing yourself that silence is safer, that your needs are a burden, that wanting more is selfish. But real love doesn't punish you for being human. It makes room for your needs, even when they're inconvenient. 5. They use jealousy as a sign of love. Maybe they get angry when you talk to someone else, or interrogate you after you go out. They might say, I just care about you so much, or I can't help it, I love you too much. But jealousy is not love. It's fear in disguise. And when it turns into control, suspicion, or rage, it becomes abuse. Love respects, control consumes. 6. They flip the script constantly. Somehow, you're always the one apologizing, always the one trying to fix things. You bring up a concern, and suddenly you're the problem. They cry. They lash out. They make you feel guilty for upsetting them, even when you were the one hurt. This is called gaslighting, and it's one of the most confusing and damaging forms of emotional abuse. It leaves you doubting your own memory, your emotions, your reality. If you find yourself constantly second-guessing what happened, that's not love. That's psychological warfare. 7. They monitor you, your phone, your finances, your body. It might start as, I just want to make sure you're safe, but quickly becomes, who were you texting? Or, let me see your phone. Maybe they control your bank account, question every dollar you spend, or make you feel guilty for earning your own income. And in some cases, it extends to your body. commenting on what you wear, policing how you move, or coercing you into intimacy. Your body, your money, your privacy, none of that should belong to anyone else. 8. They blame you for everything: their bad mood, their mistakes, their reactions, their rage. If you hadn't said that, if you were more supportive, you're the one who pushes me to this point. This is one of the clearest markers of abuse. When someone consistently refuses to take accountability for their own behavior and makes you the emotional scapegoat. When someone chips away at your identity while calling it love, that's not love, that's erasure. These red flags don't always show up all at once. Sometimes they come slowly, layered beneath charm, vulnerability, and what looks like passion. And by the time you realize what's happening, you're already deep in the fog of manipulation, trauma bonding, and self-doubt. But here's the truth. If something feels off, if you're constantly anxious, if you're losing yourself just to keep the peace, trust that. Trust your body. Trust your intuition. It wasn't just the emotional toll that tore me apart. It was the way my body began to break down, piece by piece. I could feel the fear and the stress from those endless arguments gnawing at me, like a constant weight pressing down on my chest. My body started to betray me in ways I couldn't control. My jaw, clenched so tightly for so long, began to lock up. It felt like every muscle in my face and neck was pulled taut with no release. The headaches never stopped, and the pain was unbearable. I couldn't even open my mouth without feeling a sharp, shooting pain. I didn't know how much more I could take. I needed Botox in my jaw just to survive. The injections were the only thing that gave me any kind of relief, and even that was minimal. For a while, it was the only thing that allowed me to get through the day, just enough to dull the pain and let me function, but not enough to make it go away completely. It felt like a Band-Aid on a wound that was far deeper than I could ever explain. And as if the physical pain wasn't enough, my body decided to betray me further. I developed pleva, this rare, painful skin condition that left me covered in lesions. I was bedridden. I couldn't work. I couldn't even sit up without feeling the searing burn of the lesions covering my body. It was a constant reminder that my stress wasn't just mental. It was wreaking havoc on every part of me. But even in my pain, the person who was supposed to be my partner couldn't see it. Instead of holding me, comforting me, he dismissed it. He told me our constant arguing was probably just my period, as if everything I was feeling, every ounce of pain, every moment of emotional turmoil, could be reduced to something so simple, so small, as my menstrual cycle. I couldn't even begin to explain the hurt in that. It wasn't just an insensitive remark. It was an emotional erasure. It made me feel invisible, like nothing I was going through, physically or emotionally, was valid. It was a gut punch. And yet, it was the kind of logic that became my reality. He had a way of twisting everything, making it feel like I was the one who was the problem. My pain, my frustration, it was all just overreacting. And now for one of the most common and most painful questions survivors hear is, why didn't you just leave? And I want to pause here and say, if you've ever asked that question or asked it of yourself, I get it. On the surface, it seems simple. If it's hurting you, just go. But the reality, it's not simple. It's not straightforward. Because leaving an abusive relationship isn't just an event. It's a process. A deeply emotional, psychological, and sometimes even life-threatening process. Let's break down some of the many reasons survivors stay, not because they're weak or broken, but because the system around them is. 1. Fear. This is a big one. Fear of what will happen if you leave. And sometimes, fear of what will happen if you stay. Fear of physical retaliation. Fear that they'll take the kids. Fear that they'll stalk you, ruin your reputation, harm your pets, hurt themselves, or hurt you. Because for many survivors, leaving isn't just emotionally risky, it's dangerous. Many domestic violence homicides happen when the survivor tries to leave, not before. Second, financial dependence. Abuse often includes financial control. Maybe you don't have access to money. Maybe you weren't allowed to work. Maybe you don't have your own credit, car, or bank account. How do you leave when you don't even know how you'll feed your kids tomorrow, where you'll sleep, how you'll survive? These aren't abstract fears. They're real, practical, devastating obstacles. 3. Love and trauma bonding. You love them, and love is complicated. Maybe you've seen their softer side. Maybe you believe in who they could be. Trauma bonding happens when your body starts associating the chaos with connection. The lows become normal, and the highs feel like salvation. It becomes addictive. You wait for the good moments, even as the bad ones tear you down. They weren't always like this becomes the reason you stay, even when the person they used to be is long gone. 4. Gaslighting and confusion. When someone constantly denies your reality, twists your words, or blames you for everything, you start to believe it. You don't trust your own memories. You question whether you're being dramatic or too sensitive. You may not even realize it's abuse because they've convinced you it's love and that you're the problem. 5. Shame. You feel embarrassed. You ask yourself, how did I let this happen? Why didn't I see the signs? Maybe people warned you. Maybe you've left before and came back. Maybe you're afraid no one will understand. That shame keeps you stuck, silent, isolated, and believing that leaving means admitting failure. But abuse isn't a failure. Staying isn't weakness. And leaving isn't about shame, it's about reclaiming your power. 6. Children and shared responsibilities. This one is so layered. You might stay because you want to protect your kids. You want to keep them in a stable home. You're afraid of custody battles. Or you worry they won't understand. Maybe you're the only one doing the caregiving, and leaving feels impossible logistically. But here's the truth. Children are more resilient than we think, and witnessing abuse is trauma. Leaving might be hard on them, yes, but staying in a home filled with fear may be even harder. 7. Hope. Maybe they've promised to change. Maybe they started therapy. Maybe they've been better for a few days or weeks. You cling to that hope because it's all you've got left. You remember who they were in the beginning. You want to believe that person is still in there somewhere, and sometimes they are. But the question becomes, at what cost are you waiting for them to come back? 8. Leaving isn't one decision. It's hundreds. It's planning. It's mourning. It's grieving a version of love that never truly existed. It's rebuilding your identity from the ground up. And here's the thing. Some survivors leave and go back, again and again. That doesn't make you weak. That doesn't make you a failure. That makes you human, someone navigating trauma, fear, and survival. So if you're in that space right now, unsure, torn, scared, I want you to know you're not broken. You're not stupid. You're not a burden. You're navigating something incredibly complex, and you deserve time, support, and compassion, not judgment. Leaving abuse isn't about walking out the door. It's about slowly finding the version of yourself that believes you deserve to. And that takes time, but it is possible, and you are worth it. If any of this is hitting home for you, if you're listening with a lump in your throat, a knot in your stomach, or a quiet, aching recognition in your heart, please hear me. You deserve safety. You deserve love that doesn't leave you afraid, unsure, or ashamed. You deserve relationships that don't require you to shrink, tiptoe, or survive. And maybe you're not ready to leave. Maybe you don't know if what you're experiencing is abuse. Maybe you're in that place where the good moments still feel so good that it's hard to believe the bad ones matter. That's okay. I've been there. Many of us have. This journey isn't about rushing to a decision. It's about coming back to yourself, slowly, safely, and in your own time. So if you're not sure what to do next, start here. 1. Document what's happening. Start keeping a quiet record of the behaviors that don't sit right with you. Not for them, for you. Write it in a journal you hide, send emails to yourself, use a locked notes app, or record voice memos. Whatever feels safest. Include dates, times, what was said or done, how it made you feel. These notes can help you validate your own experience later on. They may also become helpful if you ever need legal protection or want to seek support from professionals. If you ever find yourself doubting your memory, your notes can become a lifeline back to your truth. 2. Reach out to someone you trust. Isolation is one of abuse's most powerful tools. Connection is one of your greatest antidotes. Find someone, a friend, family member, co-worker, neighbor, therapist, or domestic violence advocate, and tell them a piece of your truth. You don't have to tell the whole story. You don't have to use the word abuse. You can just say, something feels wrong and I don't feel safe. If you don't have someone in your personal life, there are professionals who do understand and who are trained to help without pressure or judgment. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is one of them. You can call, text, or chat with them 24/7 anonymously. You don't have to do this alone. You were never meant to. 3. Create a safety plan. Even if you're not ready to leave, especially if you're not, having a safety plan in place can literally save your life. A safety plan includes things like hiding a spare key, cash, important documents, or a go bag. Choosing a code word with a trusted person in case you need help quickly. Knowing the safest room in the house to retreat to if things escalate, one with exits, no weapons. Identifying safe places you could go in an emergency. You can work with an advocate to create this plan in a way that fits your exact situation, discreetly, and without judgment. The hotline can walk you through that too. Planning for safety doesn't mean you're leaving tomorrow. It means you're preparing to protect yourself, because your life matters. 4. Reconnect with your truth. Abuse disconnects you from yourself. It makes you question your worth, your voice, your intuition. So one of the most powerful things you can do, even while you're still in it, is start listening for that inner voice again. This can look like journaling, even one sentence a day, meditating or doing breath work, listening to music that reminds you who you are, reading books by survivors or therapists, spending time in nature, even just a few minutes, saying affirmations, even if you don't believe them yet. And if you have access to therapy, especially trauma-informed or domestic violence-specific therapy, that can be a life-changing tool. But even if you don't, there are free healing circles, survivor communities, and online resources available. Tiny steps are not tiny. Every act of self-connection is an act of resistance against the story that says you're not worth more. 5. Understand that healing is not linear. There will be days when you feel strong and certain, and days when you feel broken, confused, or tempted to go back or stay. That doesn't mean you're failing. That means you're healing. You're untangling trauma. You're relearning how to trust yourself. You're slowly rewriting your story. Some days, healing will look like speaking out. Other days, it'll look like surviving the day. Both count. Every moment you spend moving toward truth, safety, and freedom, that's power, that's fire, that's rebirth. You may not feel brave right now, but I promise you, even listening to this, even wondering if you deserve more, is a sign of incredible courage. And I want you to know, I see you, I believe you, and I'll keep walking beside you, episode after episode, petal by petal, until you remember who you are. As we move forward, through each episode, through every raw moment, through the moments where we have to scream, cry, or just be silent together, you'll find your way out of this fog. You'll discover the power of your own voice. You'll burn through the lies and come out on the other side, just like the petals that rise from the ashes after the fire. You think you've heard it all? The truth is far darker than you can imagine, and we're only scratching the surface. In the next episode, the fog thickens. The lies, they unravel. We're going to go places that'll make your skin crawl, but it's where your power begins to rise. I'm not just talking about surviving. No, we're talking about destroying the chains that have kept you captive for so long. The voices you've been silencing, they're going to scream. The demons you've been running from, they'll be dragged out into the light and slayed. You think you've been through the fire? Wait until you feel the heat of what's coming next. Every episode is a step closer to the truth. Every word, every story will crack your world wide open. So ask yourself, can you handle it? Because once you hear what's coming next, there's no going back. The next episode is waiting. The next chapter awaits. The stories are still unfolding. Flames have yet to burn brighter. We'll meet again soon, in 2 weeks, on the next episode of Petals in the Ashes, where the fire still rages and the truth rises from the flames.